Hey vinyl community, it's MGK Boston. That's Mike back with another video. Today, nothing, no big deal. I've been trying to hold back on my shopping because I'm going to a record show Sunday, October 16th here in Burlington. Well, not here, I don't live in Burlington, but Burlington, Mass, just up the road from me. Went to the same show there. It's just at a DoubleTree Inn. Rent the big hall, that kind of thing. If you go to the shows, you know what I'm talking about. Same outfit that ran this one I went to in the spring. It was really well organized, so they're having another one, so I'm going to go to that for sure. So anybody that watches these videos that I make and you're in the greater Boston area, ping me on YouTube, leave a comment, whatever, with your contact info. It'd be fun to do a meetup. And that includes you, Shamrock and Records, and Cheap and Cheerful, Jonathan. I know if you're watching this, you're in the hood, so you guys could come on down from Maine. Anyway, I just went out last Saturday. Local shop here in the town where I live out here in Metro West, suburbs of Boston. This store, it's called Deja Vu. This old lady runs it. She's a real trip. She's really quite nice, but the place, I've seen yard sales that are better organized. It's just, you really got to be in the mood for digging through the crates. Nothing's priced. It's not organized by genre. It's just, you just got to be in the mood to dig. And usually I'm there like on a rainy Saturday afternoon like I was last week. And I hung out there for probably about an hour, and I came out with a pretty good handful of stuff. And the stuff is priced to sell. I mean, sometimes I just wonder the deals I'm getting, but it depends when you go. She might do a big collection buy at an estate sale, and you hit it at the right day, and there's a big pile of jazz. But that's rare. But I have hit the lottery there a couple times. But I did do okay last Saturday. I got a pretty good handful, and I didn't spend a ton of cash. So I was cheap and cheerful. So without further ado, we'll dive right in. It's Jerry Jeff Walker. I don't know if this is his fourth or fifth. This was what's the release date on this? 75. Of course, this one's just called Riding High. There he is up on horseback, Jerry Jeff Walker. If you're not familiar with Jerry Jeff Walker, he was kind of part of that whole outlaw sound. And he was a protege of Guy Clark. And if you're into really, I wouldn't call it alt country, but it certainly wasn't commercial country and western, you'd know Jerry Jeff Walker. So anyway, of course, like I mentioned, Guy Clark. There's a picture of Guy Clark and his wife Susan, and of course Jerry Jeff Walker right there, and his wife Susanna. So actually, there's a song on here that you can read the little story there. Story goes, while leisurely enjoying a restful and relaxing honeymoon in Barbados with my wife Susan, Guy and Susanna, Susanna's Guy's wife, flew down to spend some time with us, and Guy sang me what I feel is the perfect wedding song, and that's a song on here called Like a Coat from the Cold. Beautiful ballad. So Jerry Jeff Walker does, so as the story, as I just said, Guy Clark sang it when they were on holiday, and Jerry Jeff Walker did a cover of it on this album, and it's a really great track. Again, Like a Coat from the Cold. And yeah, a great drinking tune on here. Pick Up the Tempo is awesome. Pissing in the Wind. That's also on here. That's a good one. Pot Can't Call the Kettle Black. I mean, it's Jerry Jeff Walker, and this is he was really at his peak here in the mid-70s, in my opinion. He just died, I want to say, in 2021, right during COVID, and lived a good long life, and he was married to his wife that whole time, right to the end. So it's Jerry Jeff Walker, Riding High. Release date on that one, 1975. And again, look at that sleeve. It's per Discogs, I call it very good plus, and that it certainly is in the record itself too. Plays great. Conversely, the sleeve on this one is not in great shape, but again, the record inside is. This is, I'd call these guys a folk rock duo, of course, with they had sidemen playing with them. Brewer and Shipley. It's Mike Brewer and Tom Shipley. They were from Los Angeles, and this was their second album. I do not have the first, but I was only familiar with these guys because they had a novelty song, One Toke Over the Line, that's on the next record I'm going to show. And I thought they were sort of a novelty act. I used to hear that one on classic rock radio once in a while, late at night, and it was kind of a funny song. But no, there's a lot more to these guys. If you're into kind of psychedelic folk like Flying Burrito Brothers, of course, early Grateful Dead, like Working Man's Dead, this has got to be in your wheelhouse. It's called Weeds, ironically. Yeah, it's Brewer and Shipley, again, their second album. And the personnel on this one, you can see right here, Mike Bloomfield, right at this time that this came out in 1969. Of course, he was involved at the time. Let's have this right here. I'm not going to get on about it, but he was doing Electric Flag at that time, Mike Bloomfield, that is. Just thought I'd show that, give it some context. But he played with a number of people. Of course, he'd come out of Paul Butterfield Blues Band. And speaking of Paul Butterfield, piano and organ on this, another guy named Mike Naftlin. He played with Paul Butterfield Blues Band too before this. And Jerry Garcia even plays on this, some pedal steel on a couple of tracks. But some highlights on this one, Lady Like You, People Love Each Other, Oh Sweet Lady is great. I mean, it's just really good psych folk rock. It's excellent. I've listened to this already 3 or 4 times just the past week. I really like it. And they do a cover here of Wichita Toe. That's kind of a Native American traditional. It was recorded originally by this guy, Jim Pepper, really wild sax player. This isn't jazz. I call it like psychedelic, weird fusion. I don't rock fusion, whatever. It's pretty good. I discovered this in a collection I picked up from a coworker a couple of summers ago. And he had a lot of good psych stuff from the late 60s, and this was no exception. It's Jim Pepper, Pepper's Pow Wow, this is called. But yeah, that cover that Brewer and Shipley does, a Wichita Toe, that's on here, and that actually closes out the record on side 2. So let's see what's on the inside here. It's a nice gatefold. Yeah, just some pictures of, you know, the band and hanging out. There they are on the inside. There's Brewer and Shipley right there. Again, Mike Brewer and Tom Shipley. Great album. There they go. Speaking of Native American, there's the guy right there. He's up on his horseback. So yeah, Brewer and Shipley. And the direct follow-up to that album, it's called Tarkio. If I'm saying that right. Yeah, it's Tarkio. And the release date on this one, what's the date on this one? 1970 for Tarkio. Yeah, and it's got kind of a nice embossed sleeve. Run your hands over it. You can't really run your hands over it. You got to look at it. I'm the one here running my hands over it. And there they are on the inside. Brewer and Shipley right there. Great follow-up. Look at those two chilling out right there. Look like they just blazed one and they're just relaxing in the kitchen. This is really good too. Follow-up again. It's a lot of the same personnel on this. Again, Mark Naftlin on piano organ. Again, he'd been with Paul Butterfield. And this is an interesting name that pops up on this record, John Kahn. Of course, there's Jerry Garcia. Of course, John Kahn was longtime bass player for Jerry Garcia Band. The Jerry Garcia Band, of course, is Grateful Dead. Of course, Jerry Garcia always had his side thing going, which of course, as I said, was called the Jerry Garcia Band. And John Kahn was his bass player forever, right till the end, I believe. I don't know if John Kahn's still around, but he did session work for other people besides the work with Jerry Garcia. And of course, as I said, he plays bass on this album. And of course, throughout this, it's pedal steel guitar sounds of Jerry Garcia, and he was a real master of that instrument. Of course, as I said, kind of a novelty track on here called One Toke Over the Line. It's good, but it's deceiving because they were capable of much more, and that shows on this record. Song from the Platte River, Ruby on the Morning, Don't Want to Die in Georgia, and of course the title track, Tarkio Road. But yeah, this is really excellent. Again, Tarkio, as I said, the name of this album, and it was the follow-up to Weeds that I just showed. Really good. So I'm going to seek some more of their stuff out. They were active into the mid 70s, I believe, and then split, and then I think they did a couple of reunion things later on, but I'm going to seek out some more of that early 70s Brewer and Shipley stuff. It's really excellent because I really dig that sound. All right. So we're totally shifting gears here. Anybody who's watched my channel in the past, you know I'm a big jazz fan and I'm a big Dave Brubeck fan. I knew Dave Brubeck had done work with his sons. He had a total of 6 children, and he died, I want to say probably 2012. I might have that year wrong. He had a pretty long life, lived to about age 90. And his sons, the 4 sons, 3 sons rather, were all great gifted musicians, Chris, Dan, and Darius, and they're all on this. So Chris plays bass, Danny was a drummer. So Chris and Danny later on formed what they called the Brubeck Brothers Quartet. So it was Dan and Chris, like Chris, as I said, on bass, and he sometimes played trombone, even piano once in a while. And his brother, as I said, Danny, was a great drummer, and they still are. They're still active. The Brubeck Brothers Quartet, that is. I've never seen them, but I'm going to seek them out. I go to a live show. They play smaller venues, right up my alley for jazz. It's perfect. But again, this was an album that they did. Brubeck and these three sons, as I said, Darius, Dan, and Chris. The release date on this one, I want to say this was, 1973. That doesn't say 1973. I don't know what does. Look at that hair. I guess I'm just jealous. I did have hair like that at one time. No photos to prove it right now in this video. But anyway, this is, of course, like I said, it's two generations of Brubeck. And again, this came out, like I said, in 73. So it's interesting interpretations on here. Of course, Dave Brubeck plays on this with his sons, of course, piano. They do a couple of tracks on here, Brubeck originals, the Blue Rondo a la Turk, of course, that legendary one from Take 5. And of course, Three to Get Ready. That's a Dave Brubeck Quartet original. And the rest of these were compositions thrown together for this record. And it's a really good one at that. I'm a big Dave Brubeck fan. And I'm going to seek out some of that Brubeck Brothers Quartet studio stuff. I don't know if there's a lot of it on vinyl, but I'm going to look for it. Really talented guys. And I've been following Chris Brubeck on Facebook. He has an active Facebook page. And I was looking at it last night. This is kind of interesting. So from that tour that they did in 73, or this tour is actually, you can see the date on this one, it was 2 years later in 75. It looks like they were still touring as a family ensemble. And this was a show they did. Looks like it was in West Hartford, Connecticut, right here. So I just thought that was kind of cool. It was an old concert promo poster. And from Sunday, March 9th, 1975. $6 in advance, $7 at the door. Boy, don't you miss those days for concert ticket prices. But yeah, I just thought that was kind of an interesting. You can see here on the promo poster, there's the cover of the album that I just showed. Two generations of Brubeck, Dave Brubeck and his talented kids. All right. Speaking of, like I said, I'm not, speaking of Dave Brubeck, that is, I'm not in the habit of duplicating stuff. I have a pretty big CD collection, as I've mentioned several times. But I mean, when I was out last Saturday, this just jumped out at me, and it was a really great price. This is a repress, I think, from 1969, 1970. This is not an original. Of course, this is, the legendary Take 5 and some of those tracks that I mentioned on the Two Generations of Brubeck album. You got three, Blue Rondo a la Turk, and Three to Get Ready were those two on that Two Generations of Brubeck. But of course, you've seen this, anybody in the vinyl community, you've seen this a million times. But I just thought it was germane to the discussion on Dave Brubeck, and I picked it up with this haul that I got last Saturday. So I thought, what the hell, I'm going to show it. So, of course, this is the, you can see there's the Columbia, the 6i. And again, this is really, really quality stuff. I got this for $5. And I think it's more than a $5 record. I haven't cataloged all these on Discogs yet, but it's in excellent condition. And of course, this is the stereo version, not the mono. As I said, a repress there is, of course, in stereo. But yeah, jacket's in pretty good shape considering, and the record's in great shape. I've played this through once just to see what it was like. And of course, as I mentioned, I had this CD for a long time. I bought this in the 90s, and nothing much on the inside here. This jewel box has seen better days. There's Dave Brubeck in the studio with the original quartet right there, and it's Take 5. So that was a nice find. If I do see something that I already have on CD and it's really special to me, like a Dave Brubeck album, and it's a reasonable price, I will pick it up, like I said. But space, the duplicating stuff, I have to be mindful. I've been culling my collection again, and I always have that reject pile going because this just comes down to space. I got one room in this house for my wife. Very generous, as I mentioned before, but I can't have overflow going out of the room, like into the living room. That won't work for her. So here's another guy. Speaking of jazz, more like soul, but this is actually a repress of the original Isaac Hayes debut. Now, he'd been active as a musician and as a writer with Sam and Dave for the Stax label and all through the 60s. And he had a songwriting partner. His name escapes me. But the two of them, what was his name? David Porter. David Porter was his co-writer, and they made the act. Sam and Dave wrote all their songs, like I'm a Man and etc. Big hits. on that Stax label. So I've got all the Isaac Hayes Movement records from the 70s, and well, actually right from the late 60s well into the 70s. And of course, he was on the Elemental label, I want to call it, and that was a division of Stax or something like that, but it was relative to the Stax label. I want to say it was the Elemental label, but this was on Atlantic. So this is actually the Presenting Isaac Hayes album from 1967, but I don't know, Atlantic must have bought the rights to it, and they renamed it, and they called it In the Beginning, and you can see the date on it, Atlantic Recording Corporation, 1972. Well, that's 5 years after the fact, when Presenting Isaac Hayes first came out. So this is more, the Isaac Hayes Movement was definitely more, I'd call it funky, still had that soul element to it, brilliant arrangements, and of course his singing. He was a good singer, really good soul singer, and of course he's passed now. He's been gone for a dozen, maybe 15 years. He passed away, but anyway, this was his debut. Like I said, it's really, really good. It's more jazzy than anything else I've ever heard from Isaac Hayes. And it shows on songs like this, like the opener here, Precious, Precious. When I Fall in Love is great. And then there's a three-part medley that rounds out side A. And that's just called Medley in 3 parts. I Just Want to Make Love to You. And part B, Rock Me Baby. And then on side 2, he goes into another medley here, Going to Chicago Blues, which is also really good. This is a really, really excellent find. I was really happy with this. I didn't pay much for it, and it's in great condition. I was looking for the other cover, and I saw this, so I had to look it up on Discogs to see what the hell I was looking at. But yeah, so again, I don't know the history here, what happened here, because all the Isaac Hayes Movement stuff is still on that label that was a division of Stax. I believe it's called Elemental. I could be wrong on that, but anyway, yeah, this is good. Isaac Hayes In the Beginning, but if you don't find this one, you want to definitely find Presenting Isaac Hayes, and that was the original release date on that one. Again, 1967. All right, so we're all over the place like I do. This is Johnny Cash record from 1980. I just saw this. I've never seen it before. The title kind of attracted me. I love all the Johnny Cash stuff from the 60s, well, into the 70s when he had his TV show. I love that stuff, and I've got a bunch of it. Now, this is no Orange Blossom Special. This is more traditional Nashville country. Although it's called Rockabilly Blues, it plays more like a traditional country album. But this was more country than a lot of stuff that was going on in Nashville in 1980. I can assure you of that. Cold Lonesome Morning opens this up. Rockabilly Blues. It's an old song that he does over again. And this was actually co-produced. 2 people, Nick Lowe and Jack Clement. You can see there's Jack Clement right there with Johnny Cash, and there's Nick Lowe at the bottom. So I don't know, like Nick Lowe, you know, from Rockpile and all that, you could say Rockabilly, but definitely, you know, Johnny Cash would have been his mentor, if you will. Nick Lowe's, that is. So this is pretty good. Again, I only paid a few bucks for this. I've listened through once, and it's certainly not going in the reject pile. Plays really well. His voice still sounded really great. His voice sounded great till the end. What am I saying? But this is, again, something I'd never seen before. And again, it was a few bucks. It's Rockabilly Blues, and the release date on that one, again, 1980. God, I should have had a beer or a glass of water, something here. My throat's dry with the Sahara in here. All right. What do we have here? Yeah. Neil Diamond, straight out of the Brill Building. This was his 3rd release, the first on the Uni label, which is a major label at the time, more associated, I think, with traditional rock artists. And Neil Diamond was no traditional rock artist. He, as I said, the Brill Building, famous for a lot of songwriters came out of there in New York City all through the 60s, pumping out hits for other people, writing songs for other people. It was a publishing house. You know, of course, Paul Simon and Art Garfunkel were, you know, 2 of the more famous alumni out of there. And of course, Neil Diamond was as well. So this, the title of this record is called Velvet Gloves and Spit. I think there's 2 different covers of this. This is a really weird cover. Look at it on the inside areas with a couple of mannequins. That's kind of strange, maybe a borderline disturbing. He's going with that no shirt, hairy chest look right there. But again, I love this early Neil Diamond stuff. I mean, I like most of the Neil Diamond stuff, even when he went, you know, full on commercial and he was a superstar into the 70s. But these first few records he did really showcased his early songwriting chops. 2-Bit Man-Child's an excellent song that you probably don't know. You know, it's not like his 70s stuff. Sunday Song is excellent, a modern day version of Love. That's great. Holiday Inn Blues is another one. The real throwaway on this one, and it's really stupid song. There it is. It's called the Pot Smoker Song. It was this anti-drug thing he did, and there's some spoken word in the middle of it, comparing the use of marijuana to heroin, which is nonsense. Just, you know, it's stupid. You know, this chorus, it's like pot, give me some pot. You could be what you're not. This kind of nonsense. And then again, there's some spoken word stuff in it. And I wish that song, it kind of ruins side one for me when I listen to this. I'm like, oh God, that's that song I hate. But anyway, the rest of this is really solid. It's called Velvet Gloves and Spit, released in 1968. Great year for a lot of things, according to me. I came into the world. Now you know how old I am. But anyway, yeah, so moving on, like I do, all different genres. And I've mentioned this gal before. Brilliant, brilliant vocalist. This is her second album. And of course, this was on the Capitol label right there. It's Nancy Wilson. I mean, this is in pristine condition. And this, I'm turning into a bit of a completist with her, because she was kind of running parallel on Capitol at the same time as Frank Sinatra. Just long contract. I don't know if she had like a 15 to 20 record deal. But it was a big deal she had. Kind of into the 70s. I won't say outgrew it. She changed her sound to more adult contemporary. But the stuff from the 60s, whenever you see it out there, grab it. It's really terrific. I would argue I've got 8 or 9 of her albums now. This is definitely the most jazzy of all of them, and that's fine with me because I really do enjoy the jazz vocal. Of course, accompaniment on this one was Billy May and his orchestra. She did, her other backing orchestra was another guy from California, very active all through the 60s and 70s, a guy named Gerald Wilson. A couple of the albums I have is with Gerald Wilson and his orchestra. But unlike a lot of these jazz vocal, the orchestra on this one, like I said, this is more jazz. Billy May kind of lets a couple of solos go on this, and it's not just straight up string arrangements. There's some nice jazz, trumpet, trombone solos mixed in here, and it's really nice. Little note on the back here: Capitol, which unearths more new talent than almost any other record company, has a real find in Nancy Wilson. So a young singer with an excellent jazz feeling and a flair for handling ballads with the aplomb of a seasoned performer. I couldn't have summed it up better myself. There she is on the back and on the front. Really good looking gal and a great voice, incredible voice. Something Wonderful is the title of this one, and some of the highlights on this one. Probably the best song on this one is Guess Who I Saw Today. That's really excellent. She does a version here of Call It Stormy Monday. That's not to be missed. I mean, it's just really solid. I feel like a really good jazz vocal, and certainly not like Lounge Lizard stuff. Really, really great singer. Can't recommend that high enough. 5 stars for that one. All right, moving into the 70s here. Of course, singer-songwriter extraordinaire. It's Jackson Browne. This is his debut. This is actually self-titled. I've seen this before. People showing it in the vinyl community. I only had a best of Jackson Browne on compact disc, and I've grown into expand more on my Jackson Browne selections, and this is a good example of that. So I saw this and I just grabbed it. This was his debut, and of course he was, David Geffen signed him, of course, to Asylum. He was one of the first acts on the Asylum label when Geffen formed that label. And so anyway, this whole album, all the compositions are Jackson Browne. So Jackson Browne, before this, he was a songwriter in Southern California for other people, and he also played with the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, if you're familiar with them. Played with them on a couple of albums. But this is really great. Jamaica Say You Will kicks it off. Of course, the big top 40 single on this one, Doctor My Eyes. Rock Me on the Water is a great ballad. Under the Falling Sky, Song for Adam. I mean, it's all good. Really sophisticated songwriter. Just really great. And one of his sidemen, I'm trying to think of the guy's name, David Lindley. David Lindley played with him all through the 70s. If you're familiar with David Lindley, he played guitar for Jackson Browne. And of course, from Los Angeles, California, right there. Of course, the Saturate Before Using is what this album gets called a lot. But again, if you look it up on Discogs or anywhere else, it's just Jackson Browne self-titled. And it's really good. Let's just see on the inside. I don't think there's anything special on here. It opens from the top, as you can see. And no, but you can see the cool Asylum Records label logo. I always like that logo. Of course, as I mentioned, founded by David Geffen. The best in the business, Mr. David Geffen. So that's Jackson Browne's debut. And just following this up, not to bore people if you've seen these a million times, this was the direct follow-up album to that. It's called For Every Man. And this one, again, came out in 73. And there's Jackson Browne on the front. It's just an artist's rendition of it. He looks like he's sitting in some sort of courtyard, chilling out. And there it is. Of course, he does opens the album with the cover of Take It Easy. He co-wrote that song, I believe, with Glenn Frey. And then on that, of course, These Days is great. Redneck Friend, that's a really fun song. As I mentioned, David Lindley, there he is on slide guitar on Redneck Friend. And he plays, electric guitar as well on this, back and forth. But and of course the title track For Every Man. So yeah, it's Jackson Browne, For Every Man, and that was his second studio release, 1973. The release on that one. Almost at the end of the pile here, folks. Back to some jazz, because why not, right? It's Cal Tjader. You could call it the vibraphone. You call it the xylophone, but I call it fun. And this is just the best of. Of course, anybody that's familiar with Cal Tjader, you're going to know Soul Sauce. That's probably his biggest hit or song ever. The Way You Look Tonight, that's a cover he does on here. Hip Walk's fun. Sunny Boy. Yeah, it's just really cool if you're digging the vibes, like if I was playing the xylophone just like that. It's Cal Tjader. There he is. Of course, he was on the Verve label. Yeah, nothing really on the inside here. Just a little note and a little story about Cal Tjader, the musician. Not sure the release date on this one. Maybe it's on the inside. This is probably late 60s. No date on this. Doesn't matter. But again, that's when he was really active all through the 60s into the early 70s. And yeah, like I said, there's the Verve label. And nothing special on the inside. Just a promo for some other Verve artists at the time. But yeah, Cal Tjader, really fun music. Kind of got a salsa vibe at points. Bossa Nova, maybe, if you will. But yeah, it's Cal Tjader. Check it out. You won't be disappointed. Soul Sauce, again, this is probably a great starting point if you want to get into some Cal Tjader. Great song. So, this is more from my teen years. Release date on this one, 1984. Of course, Malcolm Mclaren, most famous as the manager for the Sex Pistols. And again, I mentioned in one of my previous videos, I was talking about the Sex Pistols, I think. It must have been. There's a new docu-series. It's not a documentary. It's a drama series, but it's based on the early times of the Sex Pistols and Malcolm Mclaren running a sex shop in London. And yeah, so this is basically high culture meets low culture, if you will. It's kind of, it's hip hop mixed in with opera. And just some weird mixes. It's really cool. It's like you'd hear in a club maybe back in '84 in an alternative club. This is a 12-inch single, again, for the title track from the album. Gee, I can't think of what the name of that record was at the time that came out. Malcolm Mclaren's first. It might be called Fall. I think I have that wrong. I don't have it. But yeah, I was going to show a CD follow-up to this. But anyway, this is Madame Butterfly. Again, there's Madame Butterfly on the front. That was from some famous opera, Puccini's, I think it was. And nothing special on the inside here. Again, you can see it's on the Island label. You can see the Island logo down in the middle. And of course, this is the On the Fly mix. There's two versions of this. This is the actual aria on side 1, and side B has that On the Fly mix. But it's really excellent. So this was just sitting there, and I couldn't leave it there for a couple of bucks. I was like, I gotta have it. I love that song. If you're a fan of videos from the 80s, definitely look up the video for Madame Butterfly, Malcolm Mclaren. It's an excellent video, kind of art house, if you will, but it's excellent. And yeah, it's Madame Butterfly, Malcolm Mclaren. Again, check out that series on Hulu if you have Hulu. It's called Pistol. The actor that plays Malcolm Mclaren in it, he's excellent. And Malcolm Mclaren could be a real douchebag, but there's no mistaking. He knew how to find talent and milk it and get it out there. And he did that with the Sex Pistols. Arguably there would have been a Public Image Limited, or you never would have heard of John Lydon without Malcolm Mclaren and giving them the exposure that he did. He was very savvy with the media, and they show that in this series. And yeah, they don't paint Malcolm Mclaren with this put a, you know, he's not wearing a gold halo or anything like that. They show the bad side of Malcolm Mclaren too. He exploit his acts, you know. But anyway, I'm not going to go on all day about it. This was a follow-up. This came out in 1994, several years later. And this is with the actress Catherine Deneuve is actually on this, kind of spoken word at some points. But this is really cool. A song on here called Jazz is Paris. Malcolm Mclaren talking in the background with this weird jazzy backbeat. It's a trip. And this, again, it's just called Paris. There's the back, of course. There's the Eiffel Tower right there. Yeah, Revenge of the Flowers, La Man Parisien, Driving into Delirium. And but yeah, a song you definitely want to look up on here. It's Jazz is Paris. This collection of songs attempts to inscribe a map of feelings over this jazz-drenched city of Paris, a city where I have often been lost in a daydream, listening to Eric Satie, Art Blakey, and Serge Gainsbourg. Some of their blood and smells remain. And that's the thoughts of Malcolm Mclaren right there on the back of that CD. And that's Malcolm Mclaren, Paris. Just thought I'd throw that in. I didn't buy that CD last Saturday. I bought that back in '94 when that came out. But yeah, I was listening to that last night. It's a trip. I haven't listened to it in years. But again, picking up that 12-inch single, I'm like, oh, I'm going to listen to that Paris CD again. And it's great. Having not heard it I bet you I haven't listened to that in 20 years. But that's the thing about having a big collection. Sometimes it's fun to just revisit stuff you haven't listened to in a while. And that's one right there. So I think I've shown, recently I bought a Southside Johnny and the Asbury Dukes, of course, from Asbury Park, New Jersey. This was their second album. The first one was a live one. And of course, this one's called I Don't Want to Go Home, the title track for this album. And that kicks things off. Of course, Steve Van Zandt on guitar. He was their main benefactor. Of course, Steve Van Zandt from the E Street Band of Bruce Springsteen's band. And yeah, he wrote songs for them, played guitar as a sideman. Huge band. I want to say there was like 10 guys in this band. Of course, there's a Springsteen cover on here called The Fever. That's track 4. But yeah, this is really good music. And it does falls into that same kind of vein of early Springsteen. It sounds very similar to it, but it's really fun. They also do a Ronnie there's a tune Ronnie Spector's on here. She sings with them on You Mean So Much to Me. And that's a really good song as well. So that's Southside Johnny and the Asbury Dukes. Release date on that one, 1976. Of course, they were on CBS. Looks like there he is right there, Southside Johnny at the bar doing some shots. I don't think there's anything special on the inside. I had to replace the inner sleeve here. Of course, they were on the Epic label. Yeah, that stuff's really great. If you like early Springsteen, Southside Johnny and the Asbury Dukes, you really can't go wrong. So that's going to round things out today, folks. I went a little over on my time. Looks like I'm around 33 minutes. I usually try to keep these shorter to keep your attention. But those are some good records. So I'm hoping there's some stuff in there that you haven't heard before. Maybe some stuff you have, and you're going to revisit it like you do if you have a bigger collection like I do. And that's the fun of collecting. So anyway, folks, that's it. And I'll wish you a great weekend. Again, that record show next Sunday, October 16th in Burlington, Mass. If you happen to be in the New England area, again, look me up, ping me on YouTube. And I'd love to meet some of you other YouTubers out there and buy some records. Have a great weekend, folks.